if you like, what we are really interested in here is the point that I'm driving at, the point that I'm trying to make is I think there are actually properties of Islam. It may well be that it's in other religions, right? But there are properties to Islam that actually make it have a propensity to dominate the population. And if I had to guess what those are, let me finish. If I had to guess what those are, yeah, give me a ballpark figure. I mean, I don't have the numbers. I did sort of try and find them, but couldn't. What sort of fraction of Muslims across the, averaged over the entire Muslim world, do you think pray to Mecca 5 times a day? But just pray 5 times a day.
Oh God, I've got no idea.
50%, 30%. I mean, you must have. I'm not asking for a number to hold you to, right? But if I were to ask you what sort of proportion of Christians pray 5 times a day, or what portion of Christians go to church once a day, it's much lower. I would be happy making that assertion, right? I don't have the numbers, but I think that's an accurate assertion.
Okay, so my question then again is, how do you know that it's Islam which is the unusual thing?
No. That's not where I'm going with this, right? The thing is, Landon, I am trying to explain.
Hang on, wait a minute. When you're comparing, just very basic stuff, if you're trying to find out if, 2 things are the same, you do 3 tests. Because if you've got 2 things and they're not the same, you don't know which one is out of kilter. You do a third, you've got an idea.
Bravo, if you're dealing with...
It looks at, just explain to me where I'm wrong here, Thunderfoot. Because it looks
over-constrained system.
And said that
over-constrained system. It's that simple, Landon. Right? There are no absolute solutions
here. I missed that. Say again.
Over-defined system. Right? You cannot make a model which you can absolutely test. Right? You have to go on. You don't have enough information to determine a solution. Right? If you don't know, right, for someone who deals with social politics, or social issues, this I would have thought was fairly obvious. You must know this, that you can never, if you're trying to predict the population, you don't have enough information to deconvolute all the variables, right? You have to accept that.
I do know that, Thunderfoot. I also know that you try and get more information, see if there are other factors at work there. Now, certainly, when you look at the Islamic world, it has a particular footprint. It looks a particular way.
Yes.
Part of that is Islam. What I'm saying is that there are other factors at
work.
Let
me propose a mechanism here, Landon. Right? Because this is seen, across the Islamic world, that you get these very Islam-heavy countries. I think because if you have a religion where you actually have to pray 5 times a day, that is much more successful at keeping people within the faith. You add to that a culture that apostasy is either a very bad thing or punishable by up to death, then that is also a very good way of actually achieving religious conformity. Right? There is my proposed mechanism for why you see the difference between Islam and Christianity. That with one, there is not this strong indoctrination to pray many times a day, which makes it very difficult to break out of that conformity. It's very habit forming. And secondly, this huge stigma with actually leaving the faith. Now, looked at on the black areas of the map that we were looking at earlier, do you think that's an incorrect assessment? In other words, do you really think?
I think that is correct. I think that is a very accurate assessment of what's going on. This is some of the stuff that Dan Dennett talks about as well. Sure. Okay. So Muslim countries tend to have more Muslims in them than Christian countries tend to have Christians in them. Okay, right, fine.
Then why did you bother with all that stuff about politics, rentier states, and all that crap?
Because
you were happy to get to this conclusion with the same data that I had, and you wanted to kick the ball into the long grass with rentier states, with economics, with history, and so on. We fucking agree.
Right? No, we don't agree, Thunderfoot.
You just said we did.
Thunderfoot, would you listen to me, please?
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right. Right. what I said was, yeah, that is a mechanism as to why there are lots of Muslims in those countries. Okay, yeah, fair enough. What does that actually tell you about how Islam operates? It doesn't actually tell you an awful lot.
Okay, fine, yeah.
Are there any other factors at work which we can address to deal with a particular problem? You haven't looked at that.
No.
Now, the reason I raised all of the stuff about economics, about rentier states, and so on and so forth, is that part of the reason Islam is maintaining itself, maintaining its position, is because you do have these authoritarian regimes that use Islam for their own purposes to maintain their legitimacy, and to understand why they are able to do that, and to enforce things like the death penalty for apostasy and so on and so forth, and to maintain the social pressures that way, you have to look at those other factors. And frankly, Thunderfoot, with the greatest respect, it blows my mind, it really does, that you're trying to say that economics doesn't have anything to do with this.
That's a bullshit straw man, sir.
Or fine, or that you don't think you think that the Islam is the most important thing there, and that I don't see how you can say that when you haven't even considered the other things at work there. Okay, you've got a pattern. You haven't shown that your explanation for the pattern explains all of the phenomena. Now, does it explain part of it? Yeah, absolutely. That's what I agreed to. I think you're right in your assessment. But then you have to look at the other things going on. Okay?
Right.
I don't think that's unreasonable, Thunderfoot. I really don't.
No, I would agree with almost everything you've said there. Now, so, in this sense, if you were to take a coarse grain look at things, say between, I would say that both Christianity and Islam pose threats to society. Let me rephrase that. That, if you look 50 years down the line, 2 generations, if you weren't to apply any rectifying social pressure to, say, stop the creationists from getting into the education system, that society is going to be more screwed up in 50 years than it is now. Likewise, with Islam, you have this very contiguous block, which has fairly strong views about Islam. And I think that you have to be very careful that those don't get imported into the West, right? And the prime ones being blasphemy laws, right? Freedom once you lose freedom of speech, everything drops into stasis, right? If you assume, and indeed you could argue that this is a problem with Islam, is that the book is claimed to be the last perfect, complete, full word of God. They don't need to know anything else, because it's all there, right? If you accept that sort of mindset, then you're locked in stasis. You can't advance.
Unfortunately, I don't have which is something of a mistake on my part. Did you? I don't know if you did or not. If you saw the paper that I think it was DOD put out about Muslims in the US, saying that actually Muslims are doing quite a good job of controlling extremist elements within the USA. And one of the groups that's actually been doing that is the Cordoba Initiative, and that actually Park 51 is meant to be helping to try and do that.
Let's not get into the micro detail. I would be happy if we could stick with the coarse grain.
Because this all started, I'm afraid, Thunderfoot, with your attacks on Park 51 and the Cordoba Initiative.
Attacks?
And
did I attack anything there?
Well, you called them jerks.
No, I didn't.
Okay, I think it's probably fair to say that you'd rather that Park 51 didn't happen.
In the same way that I would rather they didn't build more creation museums. Yeah, I mean, I don't see a problem there.
Okay. Let me. How to explain this? You don't have the option at the moment of saying no more Islam. Okay, that's not. we can't click our fingers and make religion go away.
Yes, but
So
we
we
can put it on a trajectory to where it does go away, right?
And also, in the meantime, we can try to move it towards the moderates. If you look at, the Church of England, for the most part, it's inoffensive. I've got some problems about them being involved in education, but they're a bit wishy-washy. So if we can move things that way as well, people start to realise it's all a bit silly. Now, what are our options, or what are the narratives out there about Islam at the moment? Well, you've got one, which comes from people like Raouf, that says, Islam can be compatible with the West. He wrote the book, What's Right with Islam is What's Right with America, so on and so forth. And then you've got the other narrative coming from people like bin Laden, who are saying that America is implacably opposed to Islam. And you've got people in the middle, say. I don't think most Muslims run around thinking about this all the time, but you've got people there in the middle thinking about it. And they look around and what do they see? They're aware of these two narratives, and what do they see from the West? Well, they see the Cordoba Initiative being slandered all over the shop, for starters. I don't know, it just doesn't seem,
No, I think let me. I've got the drawing board, so I can probably poke to this and sort of try and make your point for you, if that's okay. What you're actually saying is
hang on, Thunderfoot. Wait, sorry, but if you say anything I disagree with, I'm going to.
That's fine.
Interrupt.
No, I think I can. I understand the point that you're trying to make. That let's just say this is the Islamic population in America. That the Cordoba Initiative is actually doing a fairly, or its intention was to move things this way. Either to shift the bell curve. Sorry? Right. But if you like, this is just a population in America. Right? That's a tiny fraction of the entire Islamic population,
Except the Cordoba Initiative doesn't just work in the USA. He's been out to the Middle East, as I said, to try and improve, things there, move people in the positive direction.
Well,
and he's working with, this is symptomatic of other things as well, other projects as well.
So, I think we would probably be agreed that when people moving around, they bring ideas and concepts with them. Right?
Yeah.
So when you actually get Muslims coming to America, they sort of, it's sort of intrinsic. If you're immersed in a society, you pick up aspects of it, and if you bring interesting elements, they bring those as well. So now, when you have, if you have two populations, two what I will describe as inhomogeneous populations, and just for sake of argument, I'm going to call this one Islam and this one Europe, right? So this is probably a fairly reasonable, very coarse-grained model, and you do have some sort of melting down the middle, but people can now move very quickly from one to the other, right? You just get on a plane and move halfway around the world. So there are flows of ideas back and forth. Now, if you like, there are elements that you really don't want to get imported, and elements that you would like to export, but given for doubtful gain, as in. Just out of interest, what would your proposal be to how shall we say modernise? The map. Why is it that this area has been slow to modernise when both India and China have been fantastic to modernise? Right. In other words, all the information is out there. Why have these not adopted that information in the same way that these guys do? Tiger economies, this sort of thing. Right.
The thing is, I've tried to answer that, and you bit my head off. Okay,
I'm sorry.
Part of it is religion. Part of it is the economic setup of it.
Yeah.
Part of it is that they are rentier states, and so on and so forth. Okay, and this is again the problem I have, that you haven't tried to look at these features to see if they're relevant.
But the rentier states thing, you might say, but for instance, Turkey. Turkey is a real oddball in Islam. Yeah, Turkey is one of these 90-something% Islamic countries, but it's very secular, very progressive compared to all the countries, even just across the border, Iran, Iraq, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And are you aware of the Ataturk reforms?
Yes.
Can you give us a brief description? In your own words, can you give us a brief rundown of those? So this is going back to Turkey about, what, 1920 or something?
Okay. What you had was as I understand it, I mean, I'm not an expert on
Not me.
You had the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, and it was divided up into different bits, and you had this movement that wanted to reunite them into Turkey, so the bit that's on Asia Minor would be reunited, and that you actually had a nationalist movement around Turkishness. This was the Young Turks. But you had Ataturk, obviously Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the father of the Turks, who had a particular idea about how he wanted the state to be. And so he he put into place a series of measures. Some of those were economic, he saw Turkey as being fundamentally European, but his destiny lied on that side of the Bosphorus rather than the Asian side. And so he tried to economically integrate it to a greater degree with the new Europe that was emerging with the breakup of the Romanov Empire and the Habsburg Empire. You also had various military reforms trying to come up. I think I'm right on this one, that they were trying to go for a more professional army with less reliance on conscripts. You then had the civil service reforms, trying to have a professional civil service where people were promoted based on ability rather than patronage. Having a unified state, which of course you never really had with the Ottomans, and the big one, of course, which I suspect you're going to get to. Ahmet 1980 is saying Turkey conscripts ended a few years ago. Yeah, I think NATO was sort of insisting on that because NATO doesn't like conscripts. And the big one, of course, that people are familiar with is the sort of sartorial reforms, sumptuary laws. That's what I'm looking for, and similar efforts to secularize the country.
So I mean, I think that's right. It was the abolishment of religion from the government. It was the abolishment of religious courts. It was the abolishment of religious schools and the sumptuary laws, which was basically sort of banning the burqa. Yeah.
Yeah, that there are a few more things on top of that as well. But those are certainly key factors.
But I would see those as sort of fundamental as to why Turkey is on a different trajectory to the countries that are just across the border, like Iran and Iraq. Now, I know there are other factors in there, but Turkey is not unique, but almost unique in this sense. And they did take these really very draconian laws. They abolished the last caliphate. They kicked wrong language. They got the religious element out of government. And if you take a look, if you were to sort of say, vectorially, which direction was this taking the country, it's taking it towards Europe, where Europe was. Whereas if you take a look at the trajectory that, say, England would be on now, there are elements that you have to go through if you wanted to get Sharia courts, say, into England. First of all, you have to get sort of social acceptance for them. Then, in other words, there are trajectories that you go on over time. And in this sense, I think you actually do your society favours by essentially keeping the pressure on in the way that Turkey went in whatever it was, 1920.
Yeah, I mean, it was over a period of time. Actually, one of the other things that's important is literacy. They had a big push on literacy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Educated women. They gave women equal rights and educated them.
Yeah. I mean, so, as people, if anyone here is in here from work knows me, I'm fairly pro-Turk. That's a different issue as well. But what's interesting is you said he wanted them to move to where Europe was. The thing is, that wasn't just religiously. Part of that is it was religion, yeah, absolutely, and trying to get rid of the hold that religion had on the state and on society, and he did that very effectively. But part of the way that he could do that was by offering this alternative. And that alternative wasn't just saying this stuff is wrong or bad or whatever, but looking Turkey more into Europe with everything that brought. You see a similar effect now with the countries that have been joining NATO and then the EU. You didn't have the same, obvious carrot to hold up. It was a similar idea. We're going to be a modern state, and that's a good thing. Moving to where Europe wasn't just about Islam, Thunderfoot. Yes, that was important, absolutely. Particularly as this was the Ottoman Empire, and that had to be dealt with.
The last caliphate, I think you'd be on fairly shaky ground saying that wasn't the number one factor.
Of the last caliph, sort of leaving the palace, and there are some officers, some saluting, some not, because they don't quite know what to do. It's important there, but it's not the only issue. The question is, right, once Ataturk had decided to go for those reforms, why is it that they were able, why is it that they had grip in society? Now, I don't know the full answer to that, but it's an interesting question. And it's rather more than just Islam, I think. And this is the same in other places. Anyway, moving on, unfortunately, only on to number 5.
Oh, I thought we'd given up on that a long time ago, but sure, go on, point 5.
Well, no, we're just having a discussion. The reciprocation point. You made a point in, I think it was your first video, that reciprocation is sort of hardwired into people. This is just a comment rather than anything else, because if you look at Rauf, he's a respected American. He's been sent by his president 4 times to represent his country in the Middle East and advocate for his country. He's repeatedly and publicly condemned terrorism. He's got a track record of trying to improve relations between the West and Islam. And
managed the debacle of the Project 51 or whatever.
Part 51, yeah. So his mistake there was not to realise how unpleasant the US can be. Or the US media.
I think that's... I would agree there are elements like that in all societies, maybe 30% or something. But if you like, the real unifying factor was 9/11.
You ran with it, despite and have continued to portray it in a very particular way, which bears little resemblance to what actually went on. There's a backlash, against him. He names it after Cordoba, which he interprets in a particular way. When people object to it, he changes the name. He's accused of triumphalism, imperialism, disrespect. Where's reciprocation there? All I'd say is, if you were in Rauf's shoes, how would you react to it?
I'm not quite sure. Well, I mean, the obvious thing is don't make such a bad choice of the name, but or do a little more research next time on the population.
I think even if they called it Park 51 from the get-go, people would have been objecting to it.
Well, no. I mean, if they build that in the middle of whatever Wisconsin or something, no one would care.
No, that's not what I said. I said if it was called Park 51 from the get-go, it was in the same place. Yeah, people would still object to it.
I would agree that there is one. It has been one notch down on the. I think the prime thing is that the real estate was very close to where the World Trade Center was, and people had their people of associative minds. People associate 9/11 with Islam,
and people were whipped up into a bit of a frenzy over this by people giving a very biased interpretation of what was going on.
I mean, I would have said this was foreseeable. In other words, all they had to do was sort of move it a few blocks down or something, and
do you know? Thunderfoot, the reason they did it there was because he couldn't find any other land to buy.
This is haggling over the micro details.
Okay,
I mean, you understand the principle though that if they'd built it in New Jersey or something, it's
Yeah,
you just got blank
yeah,
stares from everyone.
I think that's slightly unfortunate. Now, you said in one of your videos, Saudi Arabia, right, quote, Saudi Arabia is maybe an archetypal example of what Islam has to offer. It's a mainstream Islamic country governed by Muslims who believe in the application of Sharia, end quote. Do you stand by that?
Well, it depends on how many Islamic countries you can name. There aren't actually that many.
I've got 47 here.
Are those theocracies? There are very few theocracies.
So you said it's a mainstream Islamic country.
Well, yeah. I mean, look. Let me agree with you in part here. In that, yeah. It's a tenacious. With Islam, it depends whether you call an Islamic country one that actually has a majority of Muslims in it, or one that is actually run by Sharia law. That is primarily run by Sharia law. I mean, lots of these countries have very heavy, there's the black areas on the map. There's lots of countries that have lots of, very high fractional population of Muslims. The number who actually are theocracies is actually fairly small. Okay, so in other words, it's almost de facto if you've only got 5 countries, then any one is a mainstream country. So, all right, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really haggle on this point. I mean, in other words, even if it's true that it's not, does that really change anything?
Okay, so basically what you're saying is if you look at a tiny number of people, of states, the point is true. When you actually look at the 47 majority Muslim states...
I'm not haggling with you, but even if that's right, even if it's a sort of redundant point, peripheral, irrelevant, what difference does it make?
The difference it makes is this. I don't want to go on to this too much, is that you were giving the impression, or you gave the impression, that you were talking about the 47 states. I think that later on you linked. Well, actually, no, we'll move on from this. I mean, all I'll say is that on the Freedom House list ranking, Saudi Arabia is one above, as bad as it can possibly be.
Somalia.
That's 7 and 7.
Okay.
So Saudi Arabia is 7 for political rights, 6 for civil liberties. I mean, of the 47 majority Muslim states, 3 are as bad as Saudi Arabia, 5 are actually worse, and 38 are better. So that's, I would ask you to be a little bit more...
Well, I mean, even if I admit that I'm flat wrong, what difference does that really make?
Because in your... Thunderf00t, to be honest, because you're known for being accurate. People expect you to be accurate. You got it wrong. You were giving a wrong impression about the nature of...
So you're worried about my credibility here?
No, it's not that I'm ready. Well, I am worried about your credibility, to be honest, Thunderf00t.
No, you're not.
I do actually have a lot of respect.
No, you're not.
Well, actually, I am, Thunderf00t. But
are you saying that you have genuine concern over how people view me?
Oh yes. I mean, that's why I...
With respect, sir, spare me the crocodile tears.
Well, okay, that's why I put things in my description saying that I don't consider you a racist or a bigot or anything. Anyway, the point is, quite apart from your reputation, people tend to take your word on trust. Next one. What should we move on to next?
How about we'll do one for me here. That civilization is not a monument to science. Science is a monument to civilization. Point that you made at least twice.
Yeah, can we take that with the one after, with number 19 as well?
Fine.
On my list, 18. Civilization is not a monument to science. Science is a monument to civilization. And 19 is the above debate is daft. We're looking at multiple phenomena.
So, by your own definition, point 16 is not 16.
18.
Yeah, is utterly redundant.
Yeah, and so is your counterpoint to it.
No, I would disagree. I would not only do I disagree that civilization is not that civilization is a monument to science. That's been a long-running theme on this channel. And I think that's accurate. And for you to phrase it the other way around is first of all, wrong. Secondly, a point of pedantry, and then to actually go on in your next point to say that, well, I think it's stupid anyway. I really wasn't quite sure where you were going with that.
Well, basically, what I was saying is that science and civilization are part of each other. It's an iterative process that go together, and you've got various other factors at work as well.
I mean, you do. Let me make my point here. Let me make my point here, and then I'll let you respond. You don't understand that science is a mechanism, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you were to actually sort of take a look at how it actually works, science is effectively a pump, right? Or a generator, one or the other. And that generates knowledge, right? And knowledge can be technologically applied to create civilizations, which I'm just going to draw as two towers just for the sake of argument, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, civilization, which is something that is built, is a monument to the mechanism, which is science. I mean, I don't see.
Bring out my copy of Karl Popper. Galileo Galilei,
Yeah.
he was slowed down by the Vatican in his discoveries. Yeah.
Fine.
That was the civilization of the time. You need, in order for science to be able to act freely, you need to have a certain development of civilization. What I'm saying is that the two go hand in hand, that science is able to deal with more and more fundamental questions as civilization is more and more accepting that is an appropriate thing for science to be doing. That's the only, I mean, this is not a big issue here, Thunderf00t.
That's why I wondered why you listed it in your substantives.
Well, I mean, you've already made it clear that you consider all of these to be fairly weak. You still managed to talk about them for an hour and a half. Anyway.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
And you've already admitted that you were wrong on a few things.
On one by no, maybe two. But I mean, likewise. Considering this is.
Hopefully, I've done a decent job of showing that the situation is rather more complicated than you put out there. Can we move on to?
I don't recall saying that would. I mean, that's just another straw man, sir. Where did I say that it was this simple?
Well, the point. Okay, in fairness, that's fair, Thunderf00t. The point I'm making is that by watching your videos, you get the impression that you think Islam is the cause for all of these problems. Certainly, it's part of it, but it's rather more than that as well, and you haven't even attempted to look at those other factors.
But in many of those, you agreed, with the map that there was a sort of causal relationship between how Islam is practiced and the black areas on the map.
Yeah, and I said that what I've been saying is that that's part of it, not all of it. And that
we agree.
And that you haven't demonstrated the relationship is causal. You've only described that the relationship is there. And you've got.
We agreed that the factors are related.
You've not even looked at other factors to see if they're relevant.
But you agreed with the proposed mechanism. You agreed with the observation. You agreed with the proposed mechanism. Why are you now saying that I should look at other factors?
Because it seems to me that you've looked at it and said, look, here's a mechanism. This explains all of it. I certainly agree with you. And what I said was,
Yeah, Landon. People are saying not again. I think. Well, let's move on. Draw map.
Mecca is an icon of discrimination. Shall we deal with that one?
I would say that's a fairly reasonable assertion. Yeah.
Okay. Do you extend the same idea to all Roman Catholics and all Oriental Orthodox churches on the basis that they have parts of their religious areas that aren't open to everyone?
I think, Landon, there is a slight difference between, if only on scale, between saying that I don't want you in our churches, which we own, and I don't want you in a city. And indeed, that I don't want any non-Muslims in our city.
Okay, that's an interesting one there, Thunderf00t, because The Quran 928, it's got something moderately unpleasant about Muslims being ritually unclean. And then it says it's actually just the Kaaba, the Sanctus Sanctorum, that non-Muslims aren't allowed into. There's historic evidence for that as well, in that non-Muslims have been allowed into those cities and so on. And then it's actually the Saudi Arabian government, the House of Saud, and their Wahhabist interpretation of Islam, that bans people from both Mecca and Medina.
Yeah, which I think you'll find that the language was chosen to reflect that. You know, that Islam, as is practiced in the heart of the Islamic world in Mecca,
Okay,
is...
no, I'm sorry, Thunderfoot, but you're not getting away with that one, Sunshine. Right, the point is, people, the original Muslims is they've got to pray towards this thing 5 times a day. Okay, that's their belief. Even if, you know, the fucking Zorg came in and took over the area and wouldn't let any Muslims in there at all, they'd still have to pray towards it. That would still be their religious belief. I don't think it's fair to say that it's an icon of discrimination when they, you know, that they have to pray to, when it is something that is being imposed by the Saudi government that says that, you know, they can't get to those 2 cities. In any case, are you really saying that a group, you know, can't have property and say it can do what it wants with it? I mean, you're not allowed into the RAC club unless you're a member.
Yes,
you know,
but London, that's not a city, and it's not instituted by the government, and it's not based on their religion.
Okay, are you right? Do you think that ordinary Muslims who pray towards the Kaaba are responsible for the decisions made by the government of Saudi Arabia?
That's not what's said. That Mecca is an icon of discrimination.
Okay, right. You said, right, why is Mecca an icon of discrimination?
Because it's a city, and that the actual Islamic government that runs the country won't allow any non-Muslims into it. I mean, I'd have thought that's fairly simple.
Can we clarify that? It's the government of Saudi Arabia that won't allow non-Muslims into that city. Yes? Is that an accurate? Yeah? Okay. Do you think that the Muslims who pray towards the Kaaba are responsible or not responsible or partially responsible for the actions of the government of Saudi Arabia?
That's well, evidently in that case not, but is that something that I said?
Yeah, but you said that because they were praying to an icon of discrimination, you wouldn't accept bargaining chips from them marked in the name of tolerance.
Are you saying that I don't have a right to my opinion?
No, that's not what I said at all.
Well, it's an opinion. I mean,
you've got a right to your opinion. I'm challenging your opinion on the basis that it's badly formed. Now, what I'm saying is, you are saying that you will not listen to a Muslim who prays to the Kaaba, because you know, if they're claiming tolerance, because of something that's done of which they have no control, and they're not.
No. I mean, if they actually say, you know, no, I think that, you know, that's all sucks. But if they have tacit support for it, in other words, if it's not something they really care about enough to do, then under what grounds should I actually, you know, get lectured by such people on the virtues of tolerance? I mean, if their religion, if they don't care enough about to do anything about the institutionalized discrimination that's practiced in the very heart of their holy site, then, you know, I don't really see why I should be lectured by these people.
Can I ask how much you've done to look for criticisms of Saudi Arabia by Muslims? Is the answer none?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Get onto Wikipedia, get onto Google. There is some out there.
London, let me make a counterpoint. How many Muslims are there in the world?
What, 1.5 billion?
And how many of those actually are vocally critical of Islam? Not of Islam, of Mecca.
What, of Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
I don't. You know, I don't.
None. Well, you know what I mean. The point is that what you're actually really talking about is, you've got your population again. Yeah, you've got your population. What you're saying is there are actually lots of people. Even if there's only 1% who are actually vocally critical of Mecca or whatever, the running of Mecca, that can still be thousands of people. But what you're really interested in is how many of these people actually give a shit about Mecca. And I think the answer there is only a very small minority. Do I have the numbers? No more than you do.
Well, no, but equally you probably look at, if you went and asked a lot of them, I suspect that you would find that
I
quite
disagree.
a lot, don't care much either way, and would
In the
rather
West,
that the government of Saudi Arabia wasn't quite so awful in general.
I would say my expectation is, if you were to ask Muslims in the West, that they would have a significantly different response to the majority in the world. The majority in the world, I think, they are either supportive or don't greatly care.
Okay, moving on to the okay. I mean, whatever. I mean, from my point of view, what you're saying is you won't take an argument from somebody because of something that they have, no control over, because they're not complaining about it. I mean, I don't complain about everything all the time.
But London, if you don't apply social pressure to people, the status quo will maintain indefinitely.
Yeah, and right. Do you think Park 51 was a good idea or not, Thunderfoot?
That's an interesting question.
Because that's a way of
No. We've been here. Yeah. No, it's building more mosques. Building more mosques is, I've got no more support than that for building creation museums.
Okay. I think this is the fundamental thing. I mean, apart from the fact it's more than a mosque, and that does actually affect...
We've covered this one, London. Let's not go there again.
It's a statement of fact. It's more than a mosque. And that
We've done it, okay.
It's a moderate mosque that is out there specifically to try and kick the school out from the extremists, and you're making their life rather harder. Anyway, you asked a question about tolerance. Why should you tolerate the intolerant? I'm going to make...
Why should you be intolerant of my intolerance, Landon?
Sorry?
Why should you be intolerant of my intolerance?
Thunderfoot, if you want me to answer that, I will, but I said I'd stay on personal stuff.
Please.
Now, there are two
Please answer
basic arguments on the tolerance thing. The first one is the Popperian argument. I presume you're familiar with Karl Popper, The Open Society and Its Enemies, where he mentions, I think in about halfway through volume... No, it's in the notes to volume 2. When are we justified in not tolerating intolerance, or when are we justified in being intolerant of intolerance?
That's about right.
The argument he makes that I would support is that we're only justified, our presumption is that tolerance is a good thing. We like tolerance. We like having this society where, so long as you don't screw around with me, I can do what I want. And basically that tolerance is a good, principle. We're justified in, we should tolerate the intolerant, because otherwise we're becoming intolerant ourselves and it becomes hard to, to draw those lines. It's only when the intolerant become a threat to the tolerant nature of our society that we're justified in being intolerant to them, in trying to do something to stop them. And that doesn't mean we go all out. So, in the case at hand, the bits of Islam in the West, for instance, which are, should we say, less than helpful, we try to deal with. I mean, in the UK, that's the pursue strategy. People who are on the on the cusp or could go that way, we reach out to through the prevent strategy. That's the Popperian argument. I'd just be interested to hear your take on that.
There are attributes to society that are favourable to... I've lost it now. Oh no, there we go. There are elements of society that actually allow the acquisition of knowledge. right? These are attributes of society you need to gain, in that knowledge almost universally makes societies better, right? So you want to defend things like free speech, right? And to an extent, especially when you're dealing with religion, if you maintain free speech, we will eventually win because we have better arguments, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, if I were to look at it, it's defending this is what it's really all about, right? You defend the scientific, you defend the attributes that allow this system to function.
Okay, this is, as I've mentioned before, I suspect
Science,
this is
knowledge,
fundamental
society,
disagreement.
civilization.
This is about the role of science and civilization. I think you've got other things there you need to look after as well.
I agree, but it's an interesting question, right? Why was burning down the library at Alexander? It's been said that if the library at Alexander hadn't been burnt down, then Columbus wouldn't have been discovering America but landing on the moon, right?
Yeah.
Now, so what this is knowledge accumulates. So, for instance, Germany was wiped out far more in World War II than merely burning down a library, right? And merely burning down that library had a devastating effect on the civilization, right? But when you can destroy an entire nation like Germany, bomb it to hell, right? But you can rebuild it very quickly because because the knowledge is preserved. You destroy the knowledge, and we're back to making spears again, right? So really, this is everything that makes gives us a good lifestyle. It's what gives us our insight into the functioning of everything from atoms to society.
You're right. Science is tremendously important. I mean, for God's sake, I think you're in the United States. I'm in the UK. Obviously, science is important. It makes our way of living possible. Now, this is a slightly different debate, but one of the problems is I think you sometimes carry that too far, and you stray into scientism. So that's The quote I used in one of my videos was from Emma Goldman: "A revolution without dancing is not a revolution worth having." Yes, the science is important, but it's not science for its own sake. It's what we're actually trying to do. Trying to have fun.
Is there any scientific advance that has decreased your standard of living? In other words, sorry?
Nuclear weapons.
Okay. I would still. I'm talking about progression. So summed over the whole of society, right? Even if you have nuclear weapons, what about all the benefits that actually went with those? The discovery of X-rays, tracers, and nuclear reactors, right? All of these came from the same tranche of knowledge, right? Summed over year by year. Has the scientific advancement ever actually led to a decrease in the standard of living?
Well, I take the point. The gun-type nuclear weapon, the enormous amount of money that has been spent on weapons over the years, I understand that we've got benefits and they've come more quickly because there's been the spin-off from the arms industry, but I wish it was possible, it was possible to have a society where we didn't have to do that, even if it meant things happened a little bit, even if it meant our jet airline